After being an owner of this channel for over a year, I ran a Discord server full of thumbnail designers and I spotted one problem they all struggle when it comes to thumbnails, and it's the design, which separates thumbnails like this from everything else in the crowd. But how to actually create thumbnails that look fancy? Today we'll dive into it, starting from the most crucial rules when it comes to thumbnails all the way to my designing process. Starting with rule number 1, increasing your color and exposure. Make your thumbnails bright. And I know this sounds simple, but here is what most people don't realize. This one change alone can boost your CTR by 10% overnight, but wait until you see what happens when you combine this with rule number 2. And this one actually comes straight from Mr. Beast himself, and it's called the 3 element rule. It's so simple. Basically, most of the time, you should not put more than 3 major elements on your thumbnail, which only create misleading effect on your viewers. So before you make your next thumbnail, take your time and think about the topic of your video and decide which elements represent this the best and are the most important for the viewers. But here is the catch: choosing the wrong 3 elements will actually hurt your performance. And with this being said, let's go to rule number 3, and this one is pure psychology. Once you understand this, you'll never look at thumbnails the same way. Your thumbnail must make a viewer ask the question, but not just any question. See, this thumbnail generated over 1.2 million views. It makes you ask, what's this $50 million watch? It all is so simple: 3 elements, 2 photos and a text, and yet it's all people wanted. People wanted. How to make what people want to get? There is a specific way to do this that most creators mess up completely. You need a shock factor. But, and this is so crucial, it can't just be a random shock value. The secret is balancing shock with relevance, and there is a specific formula to do this. When we see Elon Musk, Augustus Caesar and Adolf Hitler, it's so unique, so weird and unusual, you already feel like clicking. Let's add text here. Numbers that seem too good to be true. But to fully unlock the power of this thumbnail, we need to know one more rule. Rule number 6 is about contrast. It's not just about colors popping, there is a deeper psychological principle, and here that most people completely miss: red, blue and black. Looking at the color wheel, we see first 2 colors on completely opposite sides of the wheel, which creates contrast. And black color is just neutral, so it's being contrast with every color. But hold on, because every color has its own tone. Actually, there is endless color tones. We don't see basic blue and red, we see something way different. And now you can say how unusual this thumbnail really is. But now, rule number 7. This is what separates the pros from everyone else. YouTube is a long-term game, and with this time, the thumbnail game changed. We went from having no thumbnail at all the way to copying outliers, and now everything has changed. YouTube loves creativity, loves when you create something unique, something new. People go crazy about all of these rules and forget about putting themselves into the viewer's perspective. So after you make another thumbnail, don't ask for a feedback. Ask yourself a question: would I click on this video? From all the YouTube thumbnails I see, would I click on my own thumbnail? And with this being said, let me show you how I create thumbnails for my clients. So to create high quality thumbnails, we gotta start here in Photoshop homepage. We're going to go File, New, and create Full HD resolution. Not HD like most of creators and most of designers, which is something like this, but actually Full HD. Now, once we have our file ready, we can drop our photo. And now, before we cut this out of the background, we have to make sure that our photo is perfectly in the frame, so once we have it cut out of the background, we are sure we are not losing any elements and any part of the body. For cutting out, never use any source of like selecting subject or magic wand or these tools right here like object selection tool or quick selection tool. And I click the mask on, and now let's change the background into black. You can see these white parts that left after making the mask. And if we're going to use pen tool and make it by ourselves, we'll completely get rid out of these white parts on the edges. We could actually use upscaler. On the screen right now you can see the best possible upscalers on the market you can use for your photos. Once you have your photo ready, go into Field Camera Raw filters, and for this it's always different, and my best tip for you is to just play around different options. But most of the time for the business thumbnails, I'm dropping out highlights to like somewhere right here, very low, like -55, and going up with the shadows. For the contrast, I'm not a big fan of using high contrast, that's why I'm using somewhere between 15 to absolutely not changing this at all. For whites, I'm doing the same. Sometimes I'm also leaving this completely without any changes. For the saturation and vibrance, it also depends on the skin color your person has. I'm not talking about black and white, but actually you can see after I change highlights and shadows, my skin is already pretty like yellowish, so I'm not going to pop out saturation or vibrance even more because I'm going to make this photo looks very weird and completely unnaturally. For the grain, you can add this. I'm avoiding this for the business thumbnails to keep the highest quality possible, but in some cases I really like this effect and it looks very cool, but I don't recommend you, even while using this, going above 20-25. Like 25 you can see it's way too much. Use around 50 to 10. It's going to be good. Texture clarity is again something that it depends on the photo. I can enhance this a little bit so we can get a little bit more texture on our face and clarity, which will give this a little bit 4K effect. And on the very end, you can add sharpening, which I also don't recommend you going too much with this, like go with 6, 5, something like this, and it's already going to be good and very satisfying. Go into skin smoothing. You're going to don't want this before. I already did this because like I'm using this on every thumbnail, and this basically get rid out of any acne and make our face a little bit more smooth. And we can also add blur and smoothness into this. I'm going to keep it like that, and boom, this is absolutely ready. Now go into your tools, and you can like use patch tool, or you can just use remove tool, spot healing brush tool. And right now you gotta rasterize your layer, so make sure the fill camera roll is fully done, and we're going to just delete unnecessary things that we just don't want, so our face is even more clear, because neural filters might not delete all of them. Now for the eyes, I like going into eyes to make it pop out more, because like you can see right now it's very dark, it's in the shadows actually. And now go paint it white, and this white part paints white, and select this on the color like I did, and do the same to the second eye. And right now let's make a clipping mask. Ctrl+J or Command+J if you're on Mac, change the color into something like soft light, and lessen the opacity because it looks very unrealistic. For the eye itself, you can copy the color, go a little bit up so it's a brighter one that you're going to paint with, and go, and you can actually play with the settings here. I'm going to go with the color dodge because it looks good. Let's add curves as well right now, because like this skin is feeling a little bit too brown still, and I want to delay this. So let's go, let's lessen the flow and opacity just a little bit. I see all of the designers overdoing this. Curves, all of that, keep it realistic and don't do too much. For the shadows itself, I'm painting this mainly on the hair, and for it we can also do that like in the places below the nose. I'm going to actually make the flow a little bit harder. Alright, already I'm going to add a little bit of the exposure so I can make the t-shirt a little bit more appealing and more interesting, like that. And this is actually 90% of the thumbnail if you want to make the highest quality possible. Now for the background, don't use any stock photos for the background, always use your client's photos or generate them by using Neo Banana, Google Studio AI, ChatGPT, whatever, something that we can generate the background.